Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to NonSequitur. And tonight we are doing the return of the Smoking Nun. So, hello, Katie. Long time no see.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I've missed you.
Oh, you did not.
I did. I thought you were going to have the flu forever.
So did I. That put me down last week. I was in bad shape.
I
But
know.
I'm feeling much better now. And tonight we're going to talk about a topic that's not at all controversial, something that
Nothing.
nobody has any opinions on, something that everybody agrees. We're just going to go through the ropes, and that'll be it,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Totally. It's going to be very non-confrontational and no arguments.
By the way, I told this story in the stream before this with Jimmy. I was hurrying in to come to get ready for the stream that me and Mr. Atheist did, and as I'm coming in,
Mm-hmm.
the door, I got caught in the door frame and ripped this chunk out of my sweater here. So if you, it's been distracting me the entire time. So if you guys see this,
Oh,
just don't look at it. But
no.
yeah, yeah. Don't you hate that? Hate it when that happens? It put a
Can I
damper
show
on my
you what
whole
I'm
day.
wearing? Can I show everyone what I'm wearing?
Please.
This is the best.
Vaccines cause adults, and very factual.
It
Very
is.
factual.
Yes.
We of course are going to get into that here in just a few minutes, but as always, we'll start out with a couple of announcements and then do news of the stupid, or what we call This Week in Newsdom. And we have some gems today.
Yay.
To start out, as you see on the right side of your screen, tomorrow is going to be amazing. If you don't know who Jesse Lee Peterson is, please familiarize yourself with him. He will be here tomorrow, along with Jake from Hugo and Jake, the Bible Reloaded, excellent channel. They're going to be talking about the SJW and outrage culture, and if it is beneficial or positive for society. And so this is going to be fantastic. I can't wait. It's actually a big week. And leading up until next Tuesday, really big week, because on Tuesday we have John Perry from Stated Clearly, who's having a debate with J.F. Garepe. Many people know for his controversies on YouTube. They're going to be having a discussion on society and does it evolve along the same lines as Darwinian evolution. And then on Wednesday, fan favorite Isaac Arthur will be returning, and we're going to have a talk about Oumuamua. Do you know? Are you familiar with Oumuamua, Katie?
No. Who is
That is a
Oumuamua?
well, it's an object in space that they really can't. There's some things going along with it that they can't really explain. It's proposed that it may be some sort of alien technology because it's doing
Okay.
things that can't they can't explain it. He's going to be walking
Okay.
through that with us and what exactly that is. Could it be something that is? Could it be some distant galaxy? Their technology sent to scour the universe. Because if you think about it, we sent Voyager, the Voyager 1 and 2, the probes out into space
Mm-hmm.
several decades ago, and they're still continuing to go out into space, and eventually they may fly past a planet that has some sort of intelligent life, but doesn't know, hasn't seen that before, hasn't seen anything that resembles what the Voyager probe looks like. So that would look like something strange flying by. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about that on Wednesday, and then the 26th, finally, Lawrence Krauss Dr. Lawrence Krauss will be joining us, the famed physicist. He will be talking about something coming from nothing, and make sure you join us for that. All right, let's. Kate, do you have anything that you would like to announce that you've got coming up?
That I have coming up? Oh, where did
Kyle's mic.
hello?
went off. So I think we need to put up an X with your arms. Make an X with your arms because he knows what that means.
Honestly, you know what? You know, you know what I did though. This weekend, I updated all of the drivers on this thing. If there's anybody out there that has any sort of like is tech savvy, please contact me after the show because this microphone keeps cutting out and it's new. I just got it like 2 months ago, but for some reason it will go off in the random places. Can you hear me now? I assume.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I was asking if you had heard, or do you have anything that you have coming up that you want to talk about, or any articles you want to point people to?
Well, I've just been working on the whole anti-vax world and so during this break, where we've been on hiatus, I have been working with NBC, national news on a story I wrote in the end of January about a woman that gave birth at 45 weeks, and a Facebook group cheered her on, and the baby died. So I've been working with NBC on they're putting together a story about the story, but more so about kind of what Facebook does to what these Facebook communities do and how Facebook doesn't really do anything to dissuade or stop these groups and stop the echo chambers and stop the pseudoscience, and sort of the real world ramifications where people are dying.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree. That's cool that you're working with NBC News. That's awesome. Well, let's get into
Yeah.
the news of the stupid and find out who's done some really dumb things this week, shall we?
Yes.
And Dave will put up story number 1, which is a naked man was arrested at Planet Fitness, and he tells people that he was there naked because he thought the gym was a judgment-free zone. Police say that Eric Stagno, 34, of Haverhill, Massachusetts, walked into the gym, removed his clothing, walked back and forth a couple times, settling in on one of the yoga mats. When officers arrived, they found him completely nude in a yoga-type position. Stagno was arrested without incident and charged with indecent exposure. Police said the only statement Stagno made was that he thought Planet Fitness was a judgment-free zone, apparently referencing the chain's slogan. Okay.
So he just thought he could be like swinging his dick, right?
Yeah. But then, see, look, yoga puts you in positions that, unless you have like a super killer body,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do naked. You know
Which
what I
I
mean? Like,
have.
you know what I mean? Like the fact that he
Yeah.
was in a yoga position when the police came, I think just adds such a nice layer to this story.
Like,
But
I wonder if he was like in the downward facing dog, or maybe he was doing like a crow position, or
I hope downward facing dog for sure. It's got to be.
yeah. I mean, because he could have his like little Johnson hanging out, and
Probably.
oh, is he
eh,
older? Because I feel like it's always the old guys at the gym that are like way too comfortable being naked.
he's in his 30s. So
Oh man, no, that doesn't even equate.
I think you expect to get arrested when you do something like that. This has to be. I mean, it was funny, but it has to be a
Yeah.
joke of some kind. Like he couldn't really think that they mean you can come naked. Obviously, this was
Yeah, like
an
well,
attention thing. Yeah.
it had to be a Poe, right? Is a
Yeah.
Poe.
Totally. Okay, the next one
Totally a
is
Poe.
it is not quite as funny, but alarming nonetheless. A former White House advisor continues to fuel the QAnon conspiracy theory that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is dead despite her returning to court. Okay,
Oh man.
so what you have here basically is his name is Sebastian Gorka. Now, if anybody remembers this guy, he is that loudmouthed bigot guy that he would go on Fox and Friends with and some mornings he would go on Sean Hannity, and he's just a disgusting garbage human, this Sebastian Gorka. But he says
Sebastian Gorka.
Right. He says that he's continuing to espouse this theory that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died even as the justice returned to work at the Supreme Court. On Friday, NBC News reporter Ben Collins wrote that now RBG will be out in public soon. The conspiracy that she's secretly dead will only involve too many people, not just QAnon folks, which is where it started, but also guys like Sebastian got into this one. He says that let's see, Ginsburg, who is 85, has been absent from the court since receiving surgery to remove 2 cancerous nodules on her left lung. CNN reported that Ginsburg went to the court for a closed conference on Friday, the first such appearance since her operation. Now, the scary part of this story is that this guy, Sebastian Gorka, he had clearance in the White House. He was an advisor to Trump. He was advising Trump on things that helped shape this country, policies, laws. And yet he's so stupid that he's still continuing to say that RBG is dead, even as she is proven not to be by showing up in court. What do you do with that?
I don't know. People that literally like ignore evidence and hold tightly to their beliefs, there's like no way to like even explain or rationalize them or
I just hope she holds on.
Yeah,
I hope she holds on. Yeah.
Dude.
She's fabulous. Like, I love her. She's badass. She's badass.
I love her.
Okay, this is what I call instant karma. Dave, we'll go to the next one. All right, and then in our next story from the Telegraph, a man is killed by a tiger in a Chinese zoo after he climbed into the enclosure to avoid paying admission fee. So,
wow.
Yeah. The attack occurred Saturday at a resort on the
food or fee on the
Dongquan Lake in eastern China's Zhejiang province. A local government stated the victim, identified only by a surname of Zhang, climbed a fence with a friend instead of buying tickets. The statement said Zhang's wife and 2 children, as well as his friend, bought tickets to enter the zoo. So the rest of his family bought a ticket to get in, and he decided that he wasn't going to pay the fee. I was trying to see what this the fee was. It doesn't say, but it said that he allegedly passed through a wire netting and eventually climbed a wall to enter the tiger enclosure while his friend stayed back. A tiger attacked him inside of the enclosure. As visitors to the park apparently watched and recorded from a distance, they shared the video on social media, which appears to show Zhang lying on the ground as the tigers encircle him. State television reported 1 tiger was shot dead by local police, and 3 others nearby were dispersed using firecrackers. One video posted online shows a tiger gnawing on his body as people can be heard screaming. He died later in the hospital. Now, there's 2 aspects of this story. Number one, this was a dumb move, obviously, by the guy who jumped the fence. I'm bothered by the tiger getting shot.
That was my initial reaction. I was like, so we're killing the tiger because the guy jumped in and they're doing what tigers do. Okay. Right. No.
Yeah, you
like I kind of feel like the tiger's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
It is. The tiger, it's like what comedian? I think it was Chris Rock said. Chris Rock. When those 2 circus guys, in the tiger clamped down on that guy's head.
Siegfried and Roy. Yeah.
Chris Rock said the tiger. They said tiger went crazy. The tiger didn't go crazy. The tiger went tiger. The tiger did what he did. So
the alligator guy, like he got killed by an alligator. Shocking.
Yeah. Now, the only reason I can see them doing this is because maybe he would, because the article says that he was still, he died in the hospital. Maybe he was still alive and they were trying to get to them, and the only way to do that was to shoot the tiger.
Yeah.
To be able to get in there to him. But I mean, if that's not the case, like shooting the tiger just because he killed somebody, that's ridiculous. The argument is the tiger getting the taste of human flesh could become dangerous to literally everyone. I don't buy that, because the tiger is just going to eat. I mean, I wouldn't think there's a different, that's not going to make him go any less tiger. That's a natural instinct within
oh my
cat.
God. I feel like that needs to be a saying, like, it's not going to go any less tiger.
Yeah.
That's,
yeah. I mean, like
seriously, yeah.
If you here, the thing is, what's telling is that his friend noticed an issue and didn't follow him in there. So obviously there was a point where the friend that jumped the fence with him said, okay, no, that's the tiger enclosure, I'm not going in there. Once you cross that fence and you go into where you're knowing that tigers are going to be, and you go in, that's on you. I mean, you're to blame for that. You cannot blame the tiger for gnawing you. Like, you just can't. It's not the tiger's fault.
No, it's like the Christian missionary that got killed by the Sentinelese people. Like,
yeah,
what were you expecting? You were gonna get killed.
How many people need to be killed by a tiger before it's not ridiculous to shoot it? That's an easy answer. You do what you're supposed to, which is follow the rules, pay the admission fee, see the tigers from a distance. The trainers and people who work there at the zoo know how to handle them. They're probably not in direct contact with them. There's probably some kind of mechanism that they do by shutting them up to put in their food or whatever. But they keep their pace. It's not the tiger's fault that somebody decided to jump a fence, go in there into their enclosure, and the tiger acted like a tiger. It's not the tiger's fault.
Yeah.
No matter how you try to spin it, it's not the tiger's fault. So they shouldn't have shot the tiger.
No way. I mean, like you were saying, unless there was like this minute chance that he was gonna maybe survive, but still, I mean, at that point, it's probably not gonna happen. So
yeah, I agree.
And what an idiot!
And our last story is going to tie us into our topic tonight. So, Dave, we can put up our last story here. A father at the center of the measles outbreak did not vaccinate his children due to autism fears. All right, 3 sons have. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, like, I just read this one, like, so this one's got me all riled up. So explain.
3 sons developed symptoms after a family trip to Southeast Asia. The man whose family is at the center of a measles outbreak in Vancouver said he did not vaccinate his children because he distrusted the science at the time. In an exclusive interview with CBC News, Emmanuel Bolido said that he and his then wife were influenced by reports that linked the vaccine that prevents measles, mumps, and rubella with autism. We worried 10 to 12 years ago because there was a lot of debate around the MMR vaccine. Doctors were coming out with research connecting the MMR vaccine with autism, so we were a bit concerned. The MMR vaccine prevents measles, mumps, and rubella by helping the body make chemicals called antibodies to fight off the virus. There is no scientific evidence linking the vaccine to autism, says the CDC. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the sound of anti-vaxxers being triggered, number one.
Yes.
Bill Doe says, we're not anti-vaccination. He said, we were just very cautious parents, and we tried to do it in a manner that was the least invasive possible on the children's health. Basically, yeah, go ahead.
I just can't with this man because, first off, there are so many holes into this story. He is like, first off, he wants us to believe that he's like suddenly like pro-science, which I don't believe at all. And then second of all, what you didn't say is that they go to Vietnam, right? So Vietnam has wild measles. They also have like other illnesses that we don't have here. And so he takes his kids to the doctor before he travels and gets them vaccinations for other things, but doesn't get them vaccinated for the measles, mumps, or rubella. So like he's almost trying to minimize his role, because it's like he was responsible enough to get him vaccinated for those things, but then failed to do the MMR, and then like who loses? His kids, and now Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. And the scary thing is that this is not in any way, shape, or form a isolated incident. There's a rise in communities around the country that, because people don't have their children vaccinated and they're interacting with other kids, it's spreading. I mean, it's almost becoming epidemic levels. I read article after article about these things popping up all over the place, and they're isolated instances, like in communities where people are outwardly vaccination. So they can pinpoint precisely that this is the case, and it's doing exactly what you would expect. It's having the exact effect you would expect for people who aren't vaccinated, just like we're told by medical professionals. I mean, there's no conspiracy here.
Well, and so he's like talking about the Andrew Wakefield, like that came out or whatever. So that came out in 1998. It was officially debunked and like retracted by the Lancet in 2010, and he lost his license. He was disbarred. He was like barred from ever practicing medicine again, because like it came to find out that he was taking money from a litigator to basically like create a study that would help them sue the manufacturers of the MMR to say it caused autism. So that was retracted in 2010. It is 2019. So if he has had access to this information for 9 years and still hasn't had his children vaccinated, that's insane.
It's a lack of critical thinking, which is what I said the other day. We need to be taught in schools more than anything, more than any other subject, is the ability to be able to look at two sets of circumstances, two claims being made, and how to go through and choose which of those two claims is more likely than not true. And the problem is, because you have people that have a they're inclined to believe these conspiratorial issues. I believe it all starts from, in my opinion, when someone says that the government somehow is lying to you. Of all the people that we've dealt with here on this show, all the different conspiracies, and they run the gambit. It all fundamentally comes down to, I was lied to somewhere. Now,
so like there's this big orchestrated like conspiracy to control, right?
Yeah, right. Are we lied to about some things? Sure, I'll grant you that. There are things that we are lied to about, that we're not being told. I don't know what those things are, but I know that in just being practical, there are things that we're probably being lied to. I don't think when it comes to the immediate health of the nation as a whole, that we're being lied to about this, because it number one, it can't be demonstrated to be the case. However, on the flip side, it can be demonstrated that these diseases are curtailed when you have vaccines.
Correct. In 2000, the United States basically had no measles. And now we have measles.
It's coming back. And all over, this was all started over like you said, an article that was written by someone who had everything that he wrote. He had to retract it. It was his license was taken away. It was discredited in every way, shape, or form possible. Like, it wasn't just that other people came out and said you're wrong. He was proven to be wrong, proven to have lied, and then taken to task for that. Yet
like
it's still
every single part of his study was like they found flaws in, from the fact of like, it's supposed to be random. You're supposed to have people that are coming to you not by, you're not supposed to be referring people, but people are supposed to just be coming in. And these people were connected to him. These were children that he referred into the study who already had diagnosis of autism, where he's trying to create this link. And then he received $50,000 from the litigators, and then another $20,000. He never received ethical approval to do the study. It lacked proper controls, and he wasn't even he did the entire study under false pretenses, where he didn't say that he was looking for this, but then he was looking for it the whole time, and then he says he came up by it.
Wasn't the sample size ridiculously small too? Like the sample size was ridiculously small.
It was 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So why do you think it is that they continue to perpetuate this conspiracy? Why did it stick around past that?
Well, so everything got debunked in 2010, but I think what happened is the rise of social media and Jenny McCarthy and all these celebrities sort of came onto this, in that time when it still hadn't been debunked. And then these people don't want to admit they're wrong. And so Andrew Wakefield still doesn't say that he did anything wrong. And he says it's a conspiracy, that it was redacted, and it really is true. And he still pushes this narrative and does, he travels. He came to Minnesota actually, and convinced our Somalian immigrant population to not vaccinate, and their vaccination rates went from 95% to 40%, and within a year or two, we had a massive outbreak here in Minneapolis. I mean, he is still wreaking damage. And then you have the rise of Facebook, where people are joining echo chambers. I mean, Congressman Adam Schiff just wrote a letter to Facebook and said, based on research that they've done, parents are getting a lot of their information from the websites and from media sites like Facebook, and Facebook doesn't do a good enough job of filtering out the fake news. And so they're also taking money from, organizations like Stop Mandatory Vaccination for paid advertising. And then Larry Cook is spending tons of money advertising these videos on Facebook that say that MMR kills babies.
Mm-hmm.
So,
do you find that this is mainly because this is just what I see. This is anecdotal, so I don't know if this is true, but I see that this is mainly a U.S. problem. That other countries.
It's not. It's all over Europe.
Is it as widespread in other countries? Like it is here.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
In fact, the Russians and Serbia and the Ukraine and almost all of Eastern Europe are dealing with massive measles outbreaks because of a coordinated anti-vax movement. There was 80,000 cases of measles in Europe last year. 72 people died. 80,000 cases. That's insane. Every single case of measles that's come here so far has been, the CDC says, is from Eastern Europe. Every single case.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, I figured I figured that would, it would be coming from other countries that don't maybe do vaccinations like we do, but I meant mainly England or the UK, Australia, Canada, because I don't hear, maybe it is the case, but I don't hear stories of big anti-vax movements over in those sort of countries. Everyone that I've seen, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, you're fine. There are you recently wrote a article about this. You sent it to me today. Do you want to kind of go through that and lay out what you detailed in that?
Was it the one where they were responding to me, or the piece I did where I said they're terrorists?
You can start. We'll start with the terrorist thing. Yeah, because I posted that as well in the YouTube community, where you can make a post and take a poll. By the way, that reminds me. I'll give you the results of the 2 polls that I put out. But I used the term domestic terrorists, and some people had an issue with that, and I'll explain why I say that here in just a second. But here's what the poll said on Twitter.
Oh, go ahead.
I asked the question on Twitter, do you think vaccinations should be mandatory? 86% said yes, 7% said no, and then another 7% said they were undecided. Now on YouTube, I did the same poll, and on YouTube, 82% said yes, 11% said no, and 6% said they were undecided. So that's how
It doesn't
people,
surprise me.
yeah,
The
overwhelming the
biggest
majority
places,
though.
right? But the problem is that those percentages are less than herd immunity levels, and so in order to have like herd immunity for most of these viruses, you have to have above 90% people vaccinating. The reason why we're seeing pockets of outbreaks right now is because in Washington and Clark County, only 76% of incoming kindergartners are vaccinated. That's insane. So you've got 24% of the population that isn't vaccinated. In order to have herd immunity for measles, it has to be over 90%. So the whole population becomes susceptible at that point, even if you have a vaccine. I mean, vaccines, the people that have the vaccines are more protected, but everything relies on that herd immunity. And then the people, they'll argue, well, it's only the unvaccinated people that are getting sick, but they fail to realize that the reason why we rely on everyone else vaccinating is because there's a very vulnerable population of our people that can't vaccinate, whether it's because they're sick or babies. Babies are far too young. I mean, the first MMR doesn't come until I think you're 9 or 12 months. So, a baby, if they come in contact with the measles, they're going to get the measles because 90% of people that are exposed to measles will contract measles if they're not vaccinated.
Now we'll switch over to the terrorist claim.
Yeah.
I stand by that. I think that they are domestic terrorists, and I say that because the definition of a terrorist is a person who uses violence, intimidation, or other tactics, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. Now, their political aim is that the government as a whole is lying to you and purposely trying to inject you with chemicals that cause diseases. And so they are engaged in political, and it's violent. Whether you like it or not, it's a tactic against other people who are caught up in the midst, like these kids that got the measles. Was because they weren't vaccinated. They called it because there are people over here who don't vaccinate the kids, who get exposed to these things and spread it on and bring them back with a vengeance. That is inflicting a form of violence on society for a political aim. That is the definition of a terrorist.
Well, yeah, and their other aim is that they don't want the government to have a say in their healthcare. So they're putting that libertarian belief that like it should be a choice, and then they want to stop the push for states to mandate vaccinations because we've literally gotten to a place right now where we can't even trust people to make the right decision to vaccinate their children, which, that's a sad state of affairs. My son is medically fragile. We make sure everyone that comes into our home is vaccinated. Everyone gets their flu shot. No one is not vaccinated around my son. My son contracted whooping cough because he was susceptible because his vaccines were delayed due to illness. It's populations like him that rely on everyone else to do the right thing. So these people are working covertly to further their political agenda to have medical freedom without even like thinking about the consequences and ignoring the data, ignoring all of the things, every scientific study that shows you what is wrong and what can happen, like consistently. So the big people that push this, for instance, like Larry Cook from Stop Mandatory Vaccination, he consistently makes these videos that say measles is a benign childhood illness where most children will be fine. Well, that's not really true. Measles can develop into pneumonia. It can develop into ear infections, which can cause permanent hearing loss. The measles can attack your cornea and make you blind. The measles can lead to death. I mean, it can cause brain swelling in children. And so they'll say, well, that wouldn't happen to a normally healthy child. You don't know that. The measles can also, it does something to your immune system where after you have the measles, for 3 years, your immune system is so shot, you can get everything. So it's not like this benign illness.
Yeah, there are two things here. I'm just watching the chat. There are people who don't think they meet the definition of terrorism. We will just have to agree to disagree. I think I can I can make a case that they do, and I will continue. Yeah. I will continue to think that they are. It's fine to have a difference of opinion, but let me just tell you real quick, Katie, why I think that you as a parent you owe it to not only yourself but your child to research these things if you have questions, right? Let's say you have a doubt, you go and you do the research. If you still come away with that, knowing the risks, knowing that you're putting not only your child's health at risk, but the risk of other people's children, that shows a lack of critical thinking on your part. And in my opinion, I don't think you should be raising kids at that point. Like if you can't make decisions for them based on their well-being, not only their well-being, but the well-being of the kids that they're going to be around, that just to me is you're willfully going in there knowing that there could be a possibility you're going to spread diseases to other people's kids. Intent on doing something is completely different, but that is to me a domestic terrorist.
Yes. And here's the thing. You don't have to think about, like, there's no single definition for terrorism. There's the UN's version in terms of like hate groups and terrorists. We're not talking about ISIS. We're talking about people that are like putting their own, they're using fear, they're using intimidation, and they're working covertly and organized to further an agenda and sell it with propaganda that's not true, so they don't have to vaccinate. And it's always done by people who have something to sell. Larry Cook sells books. Larry Cook sells classes. He sells supplements. Del Bigtree sells books. They all naturopaths are selling you a service. Homeopathic providers are selling you a service. Chiropractors. And all of these people have to convince you that vaccines are bad, so you purchase their products. Every single person that they convince to become an anti-vaxxer becomes a new paying customer for big alternative health. And it's a $17 billion industry projected to go to $40 billion within the next 5 years.
Again, I'm just looking at this. I'd like to address something. There are different forms of terrorism. There was a question asked: what if these anti-vaxxers went and blew up something? What I call them an escalated. There's just different forms of terrorism. This happens to be one form. And like I said, you're completely free to think whatever you'd like about what they do. Some people are saying you can't call them terrorisms. I can call them terrorisms, and I've done it probably 16 times since this show started. And I read the definition of what a terrorist is. If you knowingly are allowing your child to develop a disease that could spread to other people, causing an epidemic, which is happening in several different communities, I believe that is a form of terrorism. Now, if you don't, fine. Somebody just actually posted in the live chat too that the CDC. Let's see if I can scroll back up and find it.
No, it's the WHO. The WHO has listed anti-vaxxers in the top 10 for public health threats in the world.
There you go.
So the WHO says that these people are terrorists. So if you've got the WHO telling you that these people are a direct public health threat and they are threatening our people, what is that? That's terrorism. You don't, okay, so they're not carrying guns, but if you spend any time in the anti-vaccine world, they are crazy and they launch attacks and they work together. My article I wrote called It's Time That We Admit That Anti-Vaxxers Are Terrorists has been shared, I don't even know, 60,000 times. I don't know.
Mhm.
But the other night, a group of anti-vaxxers posted it all over Instagram. They put my Instagram account up. Within an hour, I had over 100 messages, 100 follow requests. My inbox on my Facebook was blowing up with like, you're a bitch, you're ugly, you're so stupid, and like threatening me, like
Mhm.
intimidating me, being aggressive, being violent. Like, if that's not terrorism, what is? Like,
There's a
they're literally they're trying to
go ahead.
silence me into like submission so they can serve their agenda.
There's a the FBI has classified the sovereign citizen movement as another form of domestic terror. Now, most people, I think, looking at that, would say the same thing that they're saying now. Oh, you can't classify them as a terrorist organization. Well, they do. They have upgraded them to a domestic terror threat because of the ideology that they stand for, and because its potential impact. So again, just on that point, that's fine if you don't want to refer to them as that. That's completely fine. You're right. I'm going to continue to do so, though.
And I will too. And you know what? I will say, like, since I wrote that article, I have had far more messages of support than I have had from messages of like hate from the anti-vaxxers. But the thing is that, like, logically, if you think about it, these people are putting our children at risk. They're putting the elderly at risk. They're putting babies at risk. And do you know who dies the most from measles? Infants under 12 months old, because 25% of them will end up in the hospital. Of that, 50% will develop life-threatening complications.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are scary numbers. And they want to say, oh, well, you know, now that we have better sanitation, it's not as serious here. Yes, nutrition does play a part, but we also have decent healthcare systems. So these same anti-vaxxers who won't vaccinate their children for the measles want to then capitalize and use our medical system to treat their children. It's like hypocrisy at its finest.
Mm-hmm.
You have areas like, and this is also in the article I wrote, one of the things that I really did want to point out is that denying a vaccine is a complete first world developed nation privilege. No other place in the world would you deny access to a vaccine. In Madagascar right now, it's one of the poorest islands that's part of the African nation in the Indian Ocean. They have a massive measles outbreak right now. 1,000 children have died since October. The reason? There was never a mandated program by their government to vaccinate children. So up until 2017, only 43% of the population, 43% of the population wasn't vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And It wasn't because they were denying it. It was because they didn't have access.
What are in the article that you wrote, what was some of the response that you got? Because you said that there was like a big reaction to it. What happened there?
I mean, on Instagram, and this is the scary thing, is that, so the people that found me on Instagram, they created this whole post, right? And it was like this whole thing about how I'm all against vaccines and I'm against all these natural health, and I'm against people that use free birth, and I'm against parents that do biomedical treatments for autism. And basically like saying it's bad that I advocate against using alternative health and like the charlatans that sell it, which isn't a bad thing, but they wanted to do it. Perhaps most disturbing though were the hashtags that they used, which included like Sandy Hook, no one died at Sandy Hook, and hologram planes, and 5G kills, and vaccines kill. So these people are like, you know, that's Alex Jones InfoWars like terrorist crap. Like, nobody died at Sandy Hook. Are you serious? Like, a lot of these people are very deep. And, I always say, like, I censor them and I delete them off my Instagram and I delete them off my Facebook page because I don't want to give them a platform. And then they say, well, you're censoring me. And I always say, like, no, like, you come to my page and you fight and you argue and you refuse to look at the data. You refuse to look at the science. You believe junk studies. You believe people that are selling you products. You don't look at the actual facts.
Mm-hmm.
And if they wanted to have a meaningful dialogue and actually learn, I would engage them, but they don't. They don't want to have a meaningful dialogue. They want to fight.
Yeah, it's amazing how people conflate what freedom of speech is. The First Amendment thing. Like, if you are posting something about like egregious, like that there was no one killed at Sandy Hook, even on any of our videos, I will delete you. Like, I will not allow you to. If you do that in the chat, you will be gone. You will be banned. You will be hidden. That's not infringing on your freedom of speech. Freedom of speech applies to the government. Can't come in and tell you. You can't get in trouble to the government for something that you say. But society has every right to hold you accountable for the stupid shit that you say. And when you say something dumb like that, then you also have to pay the consequences that come along with it. I mean, that's just the way that society works. So you have the right to say whatever you want, just not on our channel or Instagram or whatever.
Right. And like, you have a large, you've got what, 22,000, 23,000 subscribers now. And my Facebook page has 14,000 people that are like following me. My blog, my column will have probably 1 million people reading it this month. Like, I don't want anyone coming to my social media and seeing that and thinking that I'm okay with that, because that is totally out of like, that's not consistent with my beliefs. I would never want a mother to come to that page and see like the things that they say. I mean, they were attacking my son and saying like, oh, he's autistic and you're stupid and no wonder he's autistic because you vaccinated him, or, your son doesn't stand a chance and you made him this way, and like attacking other children with disabilities. And it's like, really? He's 6.
Yikes.
He's 6.
Yeah. That's speaking of that, though, that brings up an interesting point. Do you want to kind of speak to, and if you don't, that's fine. Completely. But you just mentioned that you have a son with autism, and he is vaccinated. Do you want to kind of explain the story? Because I'm sure you probably looked into this and talked to doctors on what the causes of, because I'm not familiar with it, so maybe you'd be able to actually.
So my son is autism for the most part. From what they haven't been able to find like a specific like root cause for what causes autism. Most neuropsychologists and researchers believe that there's probably many different causes for it. There's probably there's several different like neurological issues that can look like autism. So my son has hydrocephalus, which means he has extra water on his brain. He has Chiari malformation, and he's also missing part of his pituitary gland. So his doctors believe that his autism is probably more a product of the fact that his brain just is not developed correctly, and that a lot of children with hydrocephalus show signs of autism. Whether or not it's like traditional autism doesn't really matter. From a services standpoint, the autism label helps him get therapy. It helps him get better services for school. It helps him get better accommodations. There's a lot of different genetic links where there's like another disorder called Fragile X that has children that have autism. There's several different seizure disorders that can be linked to autism. So it's almost always genetic, almost like always genetic. And you'll see that with families that have one autistic child, you'll see other people that are probably autistic. And like in my family, I have ADHD. My son's neuropsychologist said that there's research being conducted now that sort of believes that, ADHD and autism sort of live kind of on that same spectrum because they have a lot of the same similarities. But I have cousins that are autistic. I have cousins who have children that are autistic on both sides of my family. My husband's side has children with autism. So it's in our family. There's a genetic component there. And research and like so much has been done to, better find, like, identify the kids that have autism. So it looks like more children are actually being diagnosed. Yes, they are. But these were probably kids that wouldn't have been diagnosed when we were kids, and they were just quirky and weird, right? And they fell through the cracks, and they might have been socially awkward, where today they would be diagnosed with autism. But there's absolutely no link, zero link. They have done over 9 studies through the CDC, and there's been no causational link between vaccines and autism.
I was going to say that very same thing. And someone asked, what about people who have bad reactions to vaccines? That's a completely different issue. Like there's nothing, we're not espousing that no matter what you take these vaccines, some people will have bad reactions to, but the important thing is they were at least attempting to get vaccinated. Now, I'm sure there are other ways to go around this. Maybe you know more than I do. I don't know if there are, but if they are having a bad reaction to it, of course they shouldn't take the vaccine. There should be another course of action that can curtail that. But they're at least making the attempt to get vaccinated. Like they're not taking a stand that, despite what the evidence says and despite the risk that I pose to the public health as a whole, I'm just not going to do it. So do you know anything about that? Like for people who maybe have adverse reactions?
There absolutely are people that have adverse reactions. Like, for instance, when my son was 3 months old, he was on life support. He almost died. We were in the PICU at Children's Hospital in Minneapolis, and a baby that was down the hallway from us had gotten their vaccinations and became paralyzed. It happens. And he's 6 now, and he's paralyzed from the chest down. But the thing is that it's hard for doctors to ever be able to pinpoint if the vaccine caused it, because everybody's DNA is different, but the vaccine elicited something within his autoimmune system that was already predisposed to be there, and then that's what caused it. They don't know. They haven't even been able to get a judgment where the doctors will say it's from a vaccine. So, that's the thing about medicine is, yes, there will be some adverse reactions. There was a doctor who got the yellow fever vaccine and died the next day. These things do happen, but it's rare. And nobody is saying that it doesn't happen. Anytime that you're choosing to make you're making a decision for your health, you're always having to weigh the pros and cons. There's side effects with every medication. Yep. Most common side effects for vaccines, it's redness at injection, itchiness. Some of the vaccines, like the MMR and the flu vaccine, can, because they're live viruses, can give you a little bit of a fever as your body is adjusting, and sort of your immune system is ignited to create the antibodies. Mm-hmm. But it's usually minor. My son got a couple, I don't know, 2 to 3 fever a day of a fever every time he got the MMR. And my son has no adrenal system. And so he's very a fever could kill him. So for us, vaccines were very risky, but we did them because we knew that he needed them. And our doctor set it up so that we just did one vaccine at a time, so that she knew which vaccine, if there was a reaction, she would say, okay, this is the one. But most healthy kids won't have that issue. My son is not a healthy kid.
I had I dated a girl in college that was allergic to a certain antibiotic. She couldn't. It was started with a D. It'll come to me in a second. But she was allergic to this
doxycycline.
Yeah. Doxycycline. She was allergic to that. Now, because she was allergic to that and had a bad reaction, does that mean we should uh, stop
Right.
distributing doxycycline? No, it just means that her doctors had to work with her to find a suitable workaround for that, and that's what they did. And it happens. There are people who have adverse reactions, like you said, to several different things, but it doesn't negate the effectiveness or the importance of that particular thing. For example, that's being proven now with these stories like this that we just went over, with this guy and his kids getting measles, or the several different stories of communities around the country that are having these things come back in like an epidemic. And it's
Yeah.
just the saddest part about the whole anti-vax movement is that all of this is preventable. Like, this
Yes.
stuff does not have to happen. At one time, like
No.
you said, we were completely rid of these things that are coming back.
Yeah,
Um,
they
uh,
create like in the year 2000, they declared measles eradicated from the United States. It is no
yeah,
longer eradicated.
and that doesn't have to. It shouldn't be that way. Like, as a
No.
as a as a progressive society, we shouldn't be regressing back to having to deal with these things just because
No.
some people lack the ability to be able to distinguish truth from fiction.
Right. And it is fiction. What they read is fiction, and they don't. The problem is that these sources, these websites like Mercola, it's like everything is layered to look legitimate. They use big words, they use scientific data, they use graphs. So people who are science illiterate are easily manipulated. It's hard to discern this, but here's the thing is if you're going to think that a couple hours of research on Google about vaccines is suddenly going to make you know more than the scientists and doctors that have been studying vaccines for decades, you're like, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect 100%, where you believe you know more than what you do. And you're so dumb that you don't even realize how dumb you are.
Hmm. So I think that it's a interesting phenomenon that's happening here. The sad thing, but also the shining like elephant in the room, is that what's the reaction that this is causing across the country is exactly what scientists said would happen if you don't vaccinate your children, like that these
Yeah.
things would come back. So I think you should be able to correlate the two and put them together and say, okay, now that we're seeing these cases all around the country of these diseases coming back, we should probably take a step back and look and reevaluate trying to push a narrative that vaccines are bad. But you don't see that. They're not.
No.
They're
Oh, you
digging
see, like
in. Yeah.
they're digging their heels in. And like
Hmm.
I had messages where so 80,000 people had the measles in Europe last year. I literally had someone send me a message that said that was wrong. The CDC was lying and they were doing that to scare us to vaccinate ourselves, um, so that we would think that the measles was going on. Like, that's how deluded these people are. Like, they see pictures of children dying from the measles and they say it's fake. They don't believe there's like the measles in pockets of the United States.
CGI.
Did you know there's this like, okay, so like there's several parts of the country where vaccination rates are like well below herd immunity. And like they've already like are like making like warnings to their communities like the measles are coming. And it's all coming from Europe. Like anybody that's below the 90% threshold is like completely susceptible to like having an outbreak. You know, Washington, Clark County has seen a 500% increase in vaccinations since the outbreak started, which is starting to finally like stop this from spreading. But it shouldn't take an outbreak for you to vaccinate your kids. And you know, people like love to say that like, okay, it's only the measles or it's only whooping cough. Did you know polio still exists in parts of Asia and parts of like Russia and China? Like polio is still in this world. In Africa, like it doesn't take a genius to think if the measles can come back, polio can come back.
Yep.
Polio is debilitating. Polio kills children. Polio cripples their legs and causes paralysis. But these people don't care. And then they travel. They are so privileged and so arrogant that they take their children that are not vaccinated and they put them out of the country and they take them to countries that have these viruses and these bacterias. And then they come home infected and they go, huh, I wonder why that happened.
Somebody in the live chat, Christy. Hi, Christy. Christy said, and these people vote. Yeah, that's the scariest part.
Well, yeah, we have a president that says vaccines are bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I just don't get it. It's one of these things like flat Earth. You know, you have anti-vaxxers and people who believe the Earth is flat. There's no one better than the other. I think they're both just ridiculous on a level. It would be laughable if unlike flat Earth, anti-vax people actually harm people. Like with flat Earth, you know, you just have a ridiculous belief. So actually, flat earthers might be a step above anti-vaxxer, but you're actually harming people at this point in the face of demonstrably proven science.
Correct.
So, I mean, what do you do? What do you do with that? You know,
I can see an anti-vaxxer in the chat, and he said, "How many times has she said like?" You know, this is what they do. They're like, see, I said like right now. I'm going to say like as many times as I want, you know, because I can. That doesn't change the fact that what I'm saying is correct and factual. They also say I'm ugly. That doesn't change the fact that I'm correct and I'm factual. They say that I'm a horrible parent. That doesn't change the fact that I'm correct and I'm factual. It's all noise. So they can criticize me all they want. I don't care.
Like I would say that they should go fuck themselves, right?
Yeah, I basically told that guy that he can bite me.
Like totally,
yeah.
Oh, Smitty thinks I talk cute. I love you, Smitty.
Yeah. So that's I think that hits the points very well. Next week we're actually setting up possibly something in the works now. You want to tell people what will be going on next week?
Yes. So in the middle of all this craziness, P.S. if you do want to have some fun and get into some fights and lock down and get dirty, my Facebook page has wild anti-vaxxers all the time, and they are idiots. And you are welcome to come fight them. I will never shut you down. I will let them play with you as long as until you get bored, and then I boot them. That's kind of how it works. But one of those people has this radio show called The Truth Radio or something, and he wants to debate, and he wants to come on the show because he said, you host something, you're so stupid, I want to come on your show. And I said, bring it on. So I'm gonna see if he will come on.
That will be fun, and we will probably get Peachy to come in to talk to that person, so she knows. She's very good with she works in immunology, so this is right up her alley. So yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And YouTube Surgeon General, I don't just delete them. I let my followers kick their ass and then I delete them.
Yeah. By the way, if all you have to go on is a word somebody just says in vocal pause terms, and not what they're saying, like the actual meat of what they're saying or the facts of what they're saying, then you are inarguably wrong, because you're focusing in on a word that they repeat rather than the science that they're putting forth. So if that's all you have to comment on, you're not doing too good. And we expect better of
No.
you. Even if you're trolling, we expect better of our trolls here. So,
Yeah, and calling me ugly doesn't, I don't care. I'm not ugly. I'm super cute.
yeah. Blue Liger Orion says, hit the like button every time they say like. That's a good idea. Like, that's like a really good idea. You know what you need to do,
Like,
Katie?
awesome. Yeah.
You need to get like the iron-on letters and iron like on top of your shirt, so it says like vaccines cause adults.
Like vaccines cause adults, right? Like, oh, see,
Boom.
everyone has one word that they use as a pause. Some people say some people say right. I say like, and it's not because I'm a Valley girl. I'm a 40-year-old woman that has a bachelor's degree and spends all my time reading science. So it's definitely not because I'm an idiot.
When I was in basic training, I had a drill sergeant who always ended his sentences with "and stuff," because drill sergeants at the time were being told they can't cuss to recruits. So what I was really thinking.
It's like Reformed Christian apologist, which is a friend of ours and friend of the shows, but he does that with "and such." After every sentence he says "and such," and I say all the time. I say all the time, like all the time.
We have different words that we pause on and that we're comfortable with. I studied Spanish, and that's what my degree is in. And one of my good friends is from Puerto Rico, and she pauses on this word "mira," and that's like look at me, look at me. Like that's her pause, and they say it all the time. So everyone has something that they pause on.
Yeah. But you know what everybody doesn't have? What? Facts and evidence.
Correct.
And so that's what you need to be focusing on. Go and try to attack the claim, the actual claim, and not the words that people focus on. But
and that's what they do. They always start throwing out ad hominem like insults because they can't beat the arguments that you present. They will say that the vaccines are injecting formaldehyde and aluminum and thimerosal and all of these like things that did you know already naturally occur in your body? Did you know breast milk contains more formaldehyde than you would ever receive in a vaccine? Did you know that there's more aluminum in breast milk than there is in a vaccine? Like aluminum isn't even in vaccine.
Now we're gonna have anti boobies.
Oh yeah. I mean, they just don't even understand basic science and how they work. That it's just they're science illiterate that think they're smarter than they are, and they believe natural news, and they believe totally Dunning-Kruger.
And the moral of this story, and many like we do here on this show, non sequitur, anything. Basically 90% of what we deal with on this channel all boils down to the fact that you have people sometimes that will declare that they are the end all be all in terms of facts and evidence, despite being shown anything to the contrary. I've had people on here that will look at a PhD biochemist in the face, Dr. Seigard, who has worked his entire career on a certain aspect of biochemistry, and he knows this inside and out. He is an expert. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is an expert on. You say write the book on it. He has written several on this. And I had a guy look at him and tell him that piece of paper don't make you any smarter than anybody. Yes, it does. That's exactly what that piece of paper does. That's the reason that piece of paper exists. That's the entire reason. That piece of paper exists. When you say something like that, when you say because you have a PhD on your wall, that doesn't make you smarter than anybody else, you clearly have a disconnect with reality, because that is not the case. That is exactly what that means. So if as a child, if you are taught better on how to look at two separate examples, one of them being has a evidence and facts attached with it. One of it being of a sort of, basically boils down to me in the nuh-uh theory. All conspiracies can be boiled down to the theory of nuh-uh. You have people who, despite whatever it is, despite what they believe, despite what it's about, you have somebody tell them, this is why it's not like that, okay? This is exactly why what you're saying is not true. All of their arguments boil down to nuh-uh, nuh-uh, nuh-uh.
And you know what it is? It's a big, fat flip off to authority, right? So these people are doing this because they don't want to follow the rules. It's rebellion and it's ridiculous and it's grow the fuck up.
Yep. It's a persecution cult. Basically, that's what a lot of conspiracies
Oh my
are.
God. And Larry Cook of Stop Mandatory Vaccination is the #1 most persecuted person in the whole world, according to Larry.
Yeah. I to a certain extent sympathize with some of them because I believed in a conspiracy. Everybody knows I believed that the Sphinx was older than they tell us in what we call mainstream archaeology tell us. And I held true to this through like 8 episodes, having an Egyptologist on here, all sorts of people. We went through this. And then there was a gentleman who was a geologist that came and broke down for me why each of my objections were incorrect. And you know what I did? I had to agree with him because I saw that what the way that I was thinking was factually incorrect. And this guy could demonstrate that I was factually incorrect. So for me to walk away from that going, I don't care what he says. I don't care what he says. The Sphinx is still older than what they tell us would be completely not only hypocritical, but just wrong. And I don't want to be wrong. You know, nobody wants to be wrong, but I had to admit.
It's like extremely humbling to get to a place where you realize that you believed something that was completely wrong. I used to believe in a lot of this like bullcrap alternative medicine stuff. I have crystals that I used to believe in. Come on. Like I used to believe in some of this crap too. Anyone can fall for it. It's not, we're not immune to it, but it takes a bigger person to look at something and look at the evidence and realize I was wrong.
Yep.
Because we can't grow. We can't grow as people if we just consistently dig our heels in. And I think one of my favorite quotes when you're dealing with these people is you can't rationalize someone who's come to a system based on belief and change their mind with facts.
Katie, will you please post your a link to your Facebook? People are going crazy asking for that. Will you post that in the live chat real quick so people can?
I will willingly. I am always. I've been. You know, it's fun. I did a live today. It was really fun where people got to ask me questions, and a couple of our non-sequitur people were there. It's been really fun to get some of the non-sec people over on my Facebook. It's fantastic.
Go support Katie. Make sure that you do that, and that will bring this episode to a close. We'll be back from now on, starting at 9:00 Eastern, following the Jimmy and Kyle show, and I think this was a good episode to return on. I think that next week will be interesting. We'll have one of these guys actually here, but the key to me, the key indicator of somebody who is genuine about their pursuit in truth. You hear that all the time. People say, I just want the truth. You know, I don't feel like we're getting the truth. A key indicator of that would be somebody that is willing to change their mind or can admit that they're wrong about something. We're all wrong about one thing, one way or the other. It happened to me. Of my entire 32 years on this planet, I too was wrong once about the Sphinx, and it was a big eye-opening for me. Now, have I been wrong since then? No. Was I wrong before then? Definitely not. But we all can be wrong. And you have to be able to admit and be willing to look and be willing to objectively, see two side-by-side comparisons and be able to determine which of those things are, in fact, true.
Right. I mean, and if we were always right, it would be super boring. And I don't claim to know everything. I always tell my readers and my followers, I am not a doctor. I am not a scientist. I am just an evidence-based mother that follows the science. And that's what I do.
I thought you were going to say I'm an evidence-based motherfucker, and I was going to be like, that's a badass way to close.
Evidence-based motherfucker. But it's like I get into fights with a lot of, parenting in general has so many different debates, and the whole woo sort of natural parenting, parents do a really good job of shaming mothers like me that follow the rules and do what the recommended requirements of are by the FDA and the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC, because I want my son to not die. I'm also not super privileged. I almost lost my son. He did almost die. And when you almost lose a child, you kind of wake up and realize, maybe some of the shit I believed wasn't right. And I think these anti-vaxxers, they live in a very privileged world where bad shit hasn't happened to them yet. They haven't had a child that's been super sick yet. They haven't had to deal with a child on life support. And you know what? All of these mothers that have children that are autistic that call them vaccine damaged, I just want to tell them to fuck off. Your child is not vaccine damaged. Your child is perfect the way it is, and you need to accept your child for who they are. Oh.
Do you have a mic near you?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drop it wherever it is. Drop your mic wherever it is.
Boom.
Boom. Okay. Thank you guys for joining us as always. Let me read this. Demonic Davro says, in Australia, people on welfare get money taken away from them if they don't vaccinate their children at the right time. There's an idea. That's a really good idea.
You know what?
You start messing. You know what though, Katie? Listen to this. You start messing with people's money. Let's see how quickly they change their views on whether or not this whole anti-vax thing is true. That's a good idea.
Did you know Australia has this pretty awesome, in 2014 or 2011, I'm sorry. In 2011, this little baby died from vitamin K deficiency because they had rejected the vitamin K injection, which helps blood clot in newborns because newborns don't have vitamin K. None of us make it on our own, and without it, a newborn is susceptible of dying from a brain bleed. So a baby died, and a couple babies died, and they actually changed the law in Australia. Midwives and doctors can no longer tell a patient that they shouldn't vaccinate or give any propaganda against vaccination, or they lose their license.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need here.
That's a good idea.
Some of the biggest people that propagate this are doctors, like Jenny McCarthy's pediatricians, for her son, Dr. Jay Gordon. He has used her as a vehicle to perpetuate this ridiculous idea that vaccines cause autism. He has used his platform as a medical doctor to convince people based on his own beliefs, not on science. He should lose his license.
Didn't it come out that her son didn't have autism after all? Wasn't that
I don't know. She's always trying to cure him, so who knows? Jenny is literally.
Yeah, I thought that it said that wasn't that after all.
Jenny believes in biomedical treatments, which is basically child abuse, where you try to cure your child of your autism. You try to make them less autistic. I will tell you, my son is amazing. He is beautiful. He has autism. It doesn't matter. We work with him. We don't try to change him. You don't have to be trying to be like everyone else. He's who he is. And then
I agree.
they end up raising children that here I'm damaged and here, but the vaccine parents say they're vaccine injured. No, they're not. They're not vaccine injured. You just refuse to believe that your child isn't perfect. And it's ableism at its finest.
Yep. And I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you, Katie, as always, for being here. Thank you, Dave, for behind the scenes. And we will be back here tomorrow for what will undoubtedly be a dumpster fire of epic proportions, because it's going to be amazing with Jesse Lee Peterson and Jake from Hugo and Jake in the Bible Reloaded. We'll answer two questions. Number one, is SJW and outrage culture a positive influence on society? And also, why, according to Mr. Peterson, I would be considered a soy-filled beta male. And if you are, like me, are interested in the answer to that question, then join us tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. And until then, you have a fan. I'm reading this. I'm watching the tweet feed. Somebody posted a tweet that said it has the hashtag blessed comment in it. So I'm responding to that. And I almost said, you guys have a blessed time.
Oh my God.
Look at you. Oh, by the way, guys, I got a comment from on Friday's video from Brett Keane earlier today. And it said, just wanted to let you know, Brett Keane had a conversation with Kent Hovind. So I haven't watched it yet, but apparently there's a video of Brett and Kent Hovind having a conversation. I can only imagine how great that is. But that, to me, is a match truly made in heaven. The manatee and the dino finally together at last. But yeah. Love when they have a happy ending. We'll see you tomorrow at 8.
Sounds like a perfect echo chamber, the length of the wavelength.
Oh, yeah. No joke.
God.
Until tomorrow, guys.